Let us look at this particular problem. In this program, we are supposed to create a multi-threaded application, and we are supposed to create three threads that is going to compute the cube root, the cube, the square, and the square root. So let's try to develop this particular application. I'm going to start a new project, and I will select Java project, and I'm going to give a name to this project, and I'm going to say sample t. Anything you can give. Again, don't try to give the word thread in your application, because thread is already used for some reason in this particular project. So let me finish it off. We are supposed to create three classes. So let's try to create the first class. So I'm going to go to my project over here, and in my project I'm going to right click and say new Java class. Let me create the square method, and we are supposed to find the square, okay, of first n number. So let me finish it off. Okay, in order for it to make it as a thread, I have to extend this one out of a thread. Okay, and as far as the program, you are supposed to implement the runnable interface. So I'm going to implement the runnable. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to say it implements runnable. Okay, so it implements runnable. Now I'm going to override one of the method, that is the run method. So before I do that, let me take a integer value n. Okay, and then I will create a constructor. So you know how to create a constructor. So I'm going to say public square, and it takes a number, and I'm going to say n is equal to number. This is to initialize it. Now let me try to override one of the method, and the method that I'm going to override is run method. So I'm going to override this run method. Now this run method, in this run method we are supposed to do something. Okay, and what is that we are supposed to do here is we are supposed to, okay, calculate oops, I have a issue with the mouse here. We are supposed to create the run method, in that we are supposed to, this method does not return anything, so I'm going to say yes out. To find the square root, I'm going to say square of, let me say, I is equal to, how to find the square root, okay, is, you know very well, if I is a variable, if you want to find the square root, you are supposed to say I into I. So that is what you are supposed to do it. So that is for the ith element. Now suppose if you want to calculate for n element, then we start with the for loop. So for I is equal to 1, we start with the 1, I is equal to 1, to I up to n. So I will go equal to n, because I started with 1, I will go equal to n. So if you want to calculate the square root of square of I, then you do it. So this is very simple. You have a for loop here. Inside this for loop, you are calculating the square of the ith element, and I ranges from 1 to n. So simple as that. So you're going to print all the values. So that's simple. Let's try to do the same thing with the cube. So I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say new Java class. Simple as that. So new Java class, same thing, I'll call this as a cube. Very straightforward. in order for it to be a thread, it has to extend out of thread. So you're going to say extends out of a thread, and it implements runnable. So simple as that. And then you write the constructor. So you say public q. Now easiest way to get the constructor is control space it, and you have the first one, generate it, press enter, it's going to generate it. Okay, however I need a variable, so let me create a variable int n, that's a local variable, and I am going to say int number. This is the parameter that will be passed along with the constructor. So n is equal to number, so simple as that. And I'm going to override it, control space, and I'm supposed to override this run method. And in this run method I am supposed to find the cube. So I say for I is equal to 1. So for I is equal to 1, I less than or equal to n. What is that I am supposed to do is yes out, and I am going to say cube of I is, so how to find the cube, you know very well, I into I, so that's going to find the cube for me. So that's simple as that. So you find the cube, and that's the end of it. The last one that we are supposed to do is we are supposed to find the square root. So let me add one more class. So right click on your package, new Java class, and I'm going to say square root. So simple as that. Finish it off. So as usual, if you want to implement if you want to create it as a thread, then you extend it out of thread. Again, you notice that I am not typing most of the thing. I am just getting the help of NetBeans, so that I don't make spelling mistake, not that I can't type it. And then it implements runnable interface. Okay, as simple as that. And then I need the constructor, so I double click control space and select the constructor. So how did I do that? Control space it, and you get the first option as generate the constructor, and I need the value of n. So int n, I initialize it by saying int number, and then inside this I am going to say n is equal to number. Then I override one method, and that method is the run method. So in this run method I am going to go and write for I is equal to 1 to I less than or equal to n. Simple as that. And then I use yes out, and I'm going to say square root of I n plus I is, okay. So we have this math, okay, and under math you get the square root, a square root of I. So you get that square root of I, simple as that. So you have created everything. Now let's create a class that's going to run the whole thing. So let's go to the main method and then start writing the class that has all these method inside it. So let's go here, and then I'm going to go to the main method here. Let's try to create the 3 instances of 3 classes. But before I do that, let me go to the scanner object, because I need the value of en. So I'm going to say scanner and scanner input, because I need one input there. Input is equal to new scanner. So this I need it for input, so scanner. Then I'm going to say system dot n. So I got the scanner object, and I'm going to say the value of n into n. So then I'm going to say n is equal to, I'll just use a s out first, enter the limit. So I get the limit. I will use print n. I don't use print ln. I let it come in single line. So n is equal to input dot next int. So I get the value of n. Now let me create the three classes. So where are the three classes? The first class that I am supposed to create is for the square. So I'm going to say square s is equal to new square, and I'm going to supply the value of n. In the same way, I'm going to say cube c is equal to new cube. So c cube, and I'm going to supply the value of n. Then I'm going to say square root s cube is equal to new square root, and I'm going to supply the value of en. Now to start the thread, so I'm going to say we need a thread t is equal to, let's say t1 is equal to new thread. Okay, and I'm going to give the runnable as first one as yes. So first I got it. Then thread t2 is equal to new thread, and I get the runnable. Where is C? So I'm just creating a thread out of these three. These are ordinary classes now. So in order for it to create a thread, it has to be, I have already told you, if you want to go fast from your house to the college, then you have to be inside a bus. So you are an ordinary person who can't run, but when you are inside a bus, you can go fast. Similarly, this is an ordinary class which can't run like a thread. You put it inside a thread and it gets the property of the thread. That's what you are trying to do here. So thread t3 is equal to new thread, and that's all you need to do. Something, and what is this something? sq is the thread. So now you have to start all the thread. t1 dot start, here is the start. Okay, start the thread. 32 dot start. Now you know very well, if you are inside a bus and if the bus is not starting, then you can't go fast. So something has to start. Similarly, this thread has to start. So you have this start method. I think you have learned the life cycle of a thread now. By now you are all familiar. Let's see whether we are able to run the thread. So we will run the thread. Let me enter the limit here as 10, and it should work. Sometime you may get the cube, square, and other thing. Now if you don't get it, run it with a very lengthy number. Let me put the number as 100, and now you will definitely see that it is running in parallel. Now if you carefully observe whether it is required or not, if you get the output, that is enough for your examination. But if you notice, carefully notice, if you really want to know, so it started with the thread 1 with the square, then it went to the thread 2, then it again came back to thread 1, that is the square, and after that it may come to the square root. Remember, square root does take a slightly longer time. So square root, I think that thread, see, you get the square root thread coming in between, and then the maybe square thread is coming. It does take a lot of calculation to calculate the square root. So maybe it is doing it. So what is happening over here is one thread is running, Okay, and in between the other thread will also the other thread is also running parallelly, and the third thread is also running parallelly. So the operating system switches between any one of them. So first you may get the square thread, and after that it may switch to the cube thread, and after that it may switch to the square root thread. It simply switches between the thread. That is why you notice that the answers are it is not just first all the square, then all the square root, all the cube, and then all the square root. You will find them they are coming in random because it is switching between the threads. So when one of the thread is stuck, it just switches to the other. You notice that it starts with the square root, then if it simply switches to cube, so it goes to the other thread, then after signed again it comes back to the square. Maybe if the square root is there, if I run it again, you may find that square root is also coming in between. So it just switches between the thread. That's all. All the best for your exam.